Good evening. How are you all? I hope you all are doing fine. Today again, I have come with an important series of questions basically on a very important writer, John Milton, and I'll be discussing some of the questions which I find are interesting, and please do reply as per your convenience, as per your remembrance uh, of the age, basically of the writer, not the age. So I'll be talking about John Milton, his life, his some of the important works, and I also will give you some trivia about his his works, about his life. So welcome again to yet another interesting quiz session on John Milton. I hope I am audible as well as visible. Am I audible to you all and visible? Please do respond in the comment box. Am I audible? Am I audible to you all? Please do respond in the comment box. Am I audible? Can you hear me? Please do respond in the comment box so that we can move ahead immediately with our questions. As this is a live session, uh, it's important, it's imperative that the technicalities are sorted and it's fine, and then we can go ahead, move ahead. So, dear participants who have joined, can you just type in the chat box and let me know whether I am audible or not? Am I audible? Please write in the chat box. Am I audible to you all? Please do write in the chat box so that I can move ahead with my set of questions that I have on John Milton today. Today I'll be discussing on John Milton, some of his important creations, some of his important works. So it's imperative for me to know whether I am audible. Am I audible to you all? Am I visible to you all? Please do let me know. Am I audible to you all? It's important to know my sound. Yes, I'm audible. Right. I'm audible, right? So that's good. We can move ahead. We can start with the session of today on John Milton. I hope you all will find it interesting. Some of the questions which I feel will help you. Definitely. So let us move ahead. The first question on John Milton. Why was John Milton called the Lady of Christ? John Milton is often referred to as the Lady of Christ. Why was John Milton referred to as the Lady of Christ? Can you all uh, like can you all share your opinion? Why was John Milton referred to as the Lady of Christ? John Milton was referred to as the Lady of Christ. It's because of his hair, his his hair, the style which he had. If you look into some of his portraits, you will find because of the hair that he had, and because of his manners, which were considered to be very delicate. So, because of his hair and delicate manners, John Milton is referred to as the Lady of Christ. This is a question which is a very common question. Who called John Milton? Who called John Milton the greatest English author? Who called John Milton the greatest English author? Can you tell me who called John Milton the greatest English author? Who called John Milton the greatest English author? I'll give you the answer. The answer is William Haley, Hayley. William Haley called John Milton the greatest English author. And where did William Haley call John Milton the greatest English author? It was in his biography, which William Haley published in 1796. So, in the biography of John Milton, which William Haley wrote and which was published in 1796, William Haley, Hayley, William Haley called John Milton the greatest English author, right? My first question was Lady of Christ. Why was he called Lady of Christ? And I answered that because of his hair and because of his delicate manners, he was called the Lady of Christ. And there's one more question. When he was in Christ College, okay, when he was in Christ College, Cambridge, at Christ College, he was called Lady of Christ. Uh, can you tell me the two masks, name of two masks that John Milton wrote? The name of two masks that John Milton wrote. What were the name of two masks that John Milton wrote? Can you tell me the name of two masks that John Milton wrote? A very famous mask. One is very famous. One is Arcades and the other is Camus. One is Arcades and the other is Camus or Comus, the way you pronounce. Now, the next question is, when was John Milton imprisoned? Can you tell me? John Milton was imprisoned for a very short, brief period of time. Can you tell me when was it? When was he exactly imprisoned? John Milton was briefly imprisoned in the month of May in 1660. In the month of May 1660, John Milton was briefly imprisoned. Now, one more trivia question on John Milton I would like to share with you all. It's important. It can be, helpful for you all. And the trivia question here is, Milton, his first poem that Milton, published. It's a very interesting story. And I think some of you all are aware of this story. Now, his first poem was on Shakespeare, right? Shakespeare, and it was published in 1630. And this poem, it was anonymously included in the second folio, okay, in the second folio edition of William Shakespeare in 1632. This is a trivia question. This is a trivia that can be asked, that John Milton's poem Shakespeare, which was published in 1630, was anonymously included in the second folio edition of William Shakespeare in 1632, right? And tell me, can you tell me the name of the work? Which is that work of John Milton where he expressed his dislike, for Catholicism and episcopacy? Can you tell me the name of the work in which John Milton has clearly shown his dislike for Catholicism and episcopacy? The name of the work in one work. This is one. The second hint is this particular work where John Milton shows his dislike for Catholicism and episcopacy is it was published in 1641. So this is second hint. You need to tell me the name of the work. You need to tell me the name of the work. Can you tell me that name of the work? You need to tell me the name of the work. Name of the work. Not yet. Not yet. You're not able to tell me the name of the work. Okay. The name of the work is Of Reformation. Of Reformation is the name of the work where John Milton clearly showed his dislike for Catholicism and episcopacy. Now, the next question is, can you tell me the name of the two narrative poems that John Milton wrote immediately after he left Cambridge? The name of the two narrative poems that John Milton wrote immediately after he left Cambridge. Can you tell me the name of the two narrative poems that John Milton wrote immediately after he left Cambridge? Actually, he wrote two poems. He wrote two narrative poems and a sonnet after he left, immediately after he left Cambridge. So my first question is, can you tell me the name of the two poems that John Milton wrote immediately after he left Cambridge? Can you tell me, anybody? Name of the two poems that John Milton wrote immediately after he left Cambridge. What are the names of those two poems? Very important. And then I'll share some, some important informations about those two poems, trivia about those two poems. The two narrative poems that John Milton wrote immediately after he left Cambridge is Allegro and Il Penseroso. Allegro and Il Penseroso. These are the two poems that narrative poems that John Milton wrote immediately after he left Cambridge. And if I talk about Allegro, which was published in 1631, La Allegro means, the meaning of La Allegro means happy man. And El Penseroso means sad man, melancholic. Okay, so let me talk about La Allegro, which was published in 1631. Here, Milton's typical Puritanism of Milton is not very much found here. And here, the Greek god, that is Euphrosyne, the Greek god Euphrosyne is invoked. And what is the function? What does that Greek god do? Is the goddess of mirth, as well as in many ways it has been alluded as a figure of joy. Okay, and it talks about the active and cheerful life on a spring day that is being spent. So Allegro is talks about a happy man who is spending his the meaning is happy man. It invokes Greek god Euphrosyne, who is the goddess of mirth and other allegorical figures of joy, and it talks about the active and cheerful life in the country on a spring day. And I told you that typical Miltonic Puritanism is absent or missing in this particular work, La Allegro. Now, the second work, that is El Penseroso. La Allegro was published in 1631. El Penseroso was published in 1645. I told you it talks about a sad day in the life of a man, a melancholic day in the life of a man. So this talks about a day which is spent in thought, in contemplation, and melancholy is very pivotal. The theme of melancholy is very pivotal, and he thinks about God, and he feels that God will definitely give him will give him rewards because of his devotion, one definitely in the near future. And God comes with prophetic visions. That is what Alpensaroso talks about, which was published in 1645. These are the two narrative poems which John Milton wrote immediately after he left Cambridge. And my next question is, he wrote one sonnet, and that sonnet is very famous and popular. As soon as he left Cambridge, he wrote a famous sonnet. Can you tell me the name of the famous sonnet that he wrote as soon as he left Cambridge? The famous poem, a sonnet that he wrote after he left Cambridge, is on his having arrived at the age of 23. On his having arrived at the age of 23. This is a very common sonnet we know about John Milton. Uh, Now, can you tell me, do you have any idea which poems are called Horton Poems? Which poems of John Milton are called Horton Poems? Why are those poems called Horton Poems? Can you tell me? Why are those poems that he composed are called Horton Poems? And he wrote some of the very famous Horton poems. One of them is we all are aware of, right? And my question is, what are Horton Poems and why they are called Horton Poems by John Milton? What are Horton Poems and why are they called Horton Poems by John Milton? Now, to answer to this question, it's a very interesting information which I also feel is interesting and has the potential of being asked in exams, in any competitive examination as well. And as students of literature, we should know, or we should revise. Sometimes it might skip off our mind. Horton Poems are, if you remember, from 1635 onwards, Milton had spent 6 years at Horton, where he did intense study, private study, and it is believed that it is because of this 6 years of dedication is what made Milton the great poet. So from 1635, for the next 6 years, Milton spent 6 years at a place called Horton, and he studied very intensively during this phase. And it was this phase, this 6 years from 1635 to 1641, is what is known. The poems which were composed during this period by Milton are known as the Horton Poems. And I'll just to name the Horton poems for you. The name is On Time. This is one of the Horton poems. On Time, At a Solemn Music, At a Solemn Music, On Time, Arcades and Commerce, Arcades and Commerce, Upon the Circumcision, Upon the Circumcision, and the most important of the Horton poems is Lycidas. So these are some of the very important Horton poems that are written by John Milton, right? And now I told you his two very famous masks are Arcades and Comus, and Comus has a subtitle. Can you tell me the name of the subtitle of this mask by? It's called Comu or Kamu, as you pronounce it. It has a subtitle. Can you tell me the subtitle? This was published around 1634. Can you tell me the subtitle of this famous mask by Milton? The subtitle of this famous mask, Kamu or Komu, is a mask presented at Ludlow Castle. Okay, at a mask presented A mask presented at Ludlow Castle. Now the next question is something which is we all know, I think, but of course sometimes we might forget. So from the perspective of revision and brainstorming, I'm asking you this question. Who called Milton's style as the grand style? Who called Milton's style as the grand style? Can you answer? I think you can type in the chat box. Who called Milton's style the grand style? You can type in the chat box who called Milton's style grand style. You can type in the chat box who called Milton's style grand style. Right? Very famous. Somebody very famous called Milton's style grand style. Who called Milton's style the grand style? It's a interesting question. And we are all aware of it, I guess. Most of us are aware of it. It's Matthew Arnold, right? We all know Matthew Arnold. Uh, Now, who called Milton poet of sublime? Who called Milton poet of sublime? Poet of sublime? Who called? John Dryden. John Dryden called Milton poet of sublime. Who was the first person to say that Saturn is the real hero of Paradise Lost? Which critic was the first person to say that Saturn is the real hero of Paradise Lost? The answer is Dryden. Dryden. Dryden was the first to say that Saturn is the real hero of Paradise Lost. Who criticized Milton's Lycidas for the inherent improbability? Who criticized Milton's Lycidas for the inherent improbability? Who criticized? The answer is Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson criticized Lycidas, Milton's Lycidas, for inherent improbability. Can you tell me from which poem is this line? This is a very famous line. Fame is no plant that grows on mortal soil. Which is that poem from Milton? Very famous poem. This line is from which poem by John Milton? Fame is no plant that grows on mortal soil. The answer is Lycidas. Now, another interesting question. Can you tell me the author of the book Milton's Grand Style? Milton's Grand Style is the title of a book written by who? Who is the author of the book titled Milton's Grand Style? The answer is Christopher Rick, R-I-C-K. Christopher Rick, R-I-C-K. Christopher Rick. Who called Milton the poet son of Spenser? 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 The answer is John Dryden. The next question. Who called Milton? And this is very famous. I think most of you all will know this. But still, brainstorming is important. Who called Milton the mighty mouth inventor of harmonies, God-gifted organ voice of England? Who called Milton the mighty mouth inventor of harmonies, God gifted organ voice of England. Tennyson, Alfred Lord Tennyson, called Milton the mighty mouth inventor of harmonies, God gifted organ voice of England. Now, the next question. The next question is, let me see which can be an interesting question. In Paradise Lost, right? Saturn takes various shapes. In Paradise Lost, Saturn takes various shapes. Now, can you tell me the name of few shapes or name of few objects or animals that Saturn takes? Saturn takes the shape, it takes many shapes, some of which are, Saturn takes the shape of comet or meteor, Saturn takes the shape of cherub, Saturn takes the shape of serpent or snake, Saturn takes the shape of toad, and Saturn takes the shape of cormorant, right? These are the various shapes that Saturn takes in Paradise Lost. Now, if we talk of Paradise Lost, we all know that it's an epic poem which is written in blank verse, published in 1667, the second edition published in 1674. The first edition consisted of 10 books, the second edition was enlarged into 12 books. On Many's request, and also because Milton wanted to follow or match Virgil's Aeneid, this 12 books was divided into 12 books. Why? Because book 7 and book 10, book 7 and book 10 was split into 2. So thus it became 12. Otherwise it was published in the form of 10 books in 1667, whereas in 1674 it came out as 12 books, right? So these are some of the questions. Now, there are many questions on various books that can be asked. Book 1 basically talks of Adam and Eve's disobedience. Okay, book 1 of Paradise Lost talks of Adam's and Eve's disobedience. Book 2 opens with Saturn, opens the debate. Saturn opens the debate in pandemonium. That is how book 2 is starting. Now, if you, I'm just giving you the gist because sometimes it is asked. Book 3 is heaven, where God is sitting and watching all the events in hell with his son. Now book 3 also has Uriel as well, and book 3 also talks about Saturn who lands on earth in Mount Nifets. Now Mount Nifets is now in modern China. Mount Nifets. Uriel the angel comes in book 3, right? And it is only during this where when Saturn sees Uriel, Saturn transforms himself to cherub. Okay. Book 4, Saturn again lands to Mount Nifets, just north of Paradise, that is the Garden of Eden. Uriel understands that Saturn is not a cherub. So, in book 4, Saturn has now reached also the Garden of Eden. It is in this Garden of Eden that he notices two of the creatures erected like animals with no shame. Basically, they are talking of Adam and Eve. Saturn notices Adam and Eve. So, these things happen, and Uriel also comes to Archangel Gabriel and tells that Uriel has witnessed at the gate of Eden, witnessed a creature which can change spirits. Gabriel sends a search party and they get hold of Satan, who is disguised as Toad. Saturn is brought in front of Gabriel by the two angels and Saturn prepares to fight him. Their fight is stopped when they see a sign from the heaven. There's golden scales and all those stuff, and Saturn recognizes the sign that he will not be able to win. So this is how book 4 goes on, and then in book 5 you see Raphael coming in, Raphael meeting Adam and Eve. Book 5 also talks about the humans coming at the top of the order. Humans are animals which have no spirit, they are followed by plants and non-living creatures. Basically, it's an encounter of Raphael with Adam and Eve. That is what book 5 talks about. Book 6, God appoints Gabriel and Michael as the leader of heaven's army. That is book 6. Book 7 is little important because this is the shortest book of all. In book 7, you have Milton asking Urania to ensure his safe transition, relating the story of war in heaven back to Raphael and Adam's conversation on earth. Then book 8, I can talk about these books of Paradise Lost in exclusively one of the videos, but I am just giving you, this is just a gist of one-liners or two-liners which are generally asked in exams, and that's why I am talking, but in details I can talk about the books in some other videos of mine. In book 8, Raphael narrates the story of creation, and Adam asks Raphael about the various motions of the various celestial bodies like a star, sun and other planets. Book 8 also talks about the creation of Eve from one of the ribs of Adam while he was sleeping, and book 8 also talks about Adam instantly falling in love with Eve. Book 9, you have the longest book. So here there are two important questions. Book 7 is the shortest and book 9 is the longest. This is the book 9 is very important in one more sense because the actual disobedience of Adam and Eve takes place in this book, that is book 9. The actual disobedience of Adam and Eve takes place in this book, that is book 9, because it is this book where Eve is convinced to eat the apple and Adam is helpless. He knows that Eve will be punished and he doesn't want to leave Eve alone, and that's the reason why he also eats the apple. That is how book 9 finishes. Book 10 is starts with the scene in heaven where God is God knows the guilt of Adam and Eve and sends his son to earth to pass the judgment. So son calls Adam along with Eve in paradise. They are embarrassed because of their nakedness, and so this is the guilty episode, the guilt episode of Adam and Eve basically takes place in book number 10. Book number 11, we have God who hears the prayer of Adam and Eve and asks his son to act as an advocate of mankind. The father calls the angels and tells about his plan. He commands also Michael to go down and escort Adam and Eve out of paradise, because now they can't live in a pure place because they are impure now. But after death they will be reunited with God. And Adam reassures Eve that she'll be able to take revenge on Saturn by being the mother of humankind. This is how book 11 finishes. In book 12, we have Michael, who is continuously relating the story of the future humankind to Adam. Now, after the flood, the humankind now act obediently God than before flood. A man named Moses is born and eventually leads the people out of Egypt. This is what book 12 talks about. And so after listening to all these stories, Adam is also relieved that God will bless a portion of mankind after having cursed mankind for such a long period of time. However, man has to suffer. A Messiah has come in the form of Jesus or Son, who will bring together everyone, heaven and earth once again, but the Messiah has to suffer. This is how book 12 finishes. In details, I can prepare a lecture concerning only about Paradise Lost. Paradise Regained, we know, is published in 1671 and has 4 books basically. It's a sequel to Paradise Lost, again written in blank verse. So, Paradise Regained details I will not be able to tell in this because otherwise it will be too long to talk about, I guess. One of the very famous works we all know by Milton, which was, you have to name me, you have to tell me the name of the work, right? So the question is, this work is basically titled after a speech which was written by Isocrates. Now, who was Isocrates? Isocrates was the Athenian orator of the 5th century BC. Okay, Isocrates was the Athenian orator of the 5th century BC. You need to tell me which is this work which is titled by John Milton, which is this work by John Milton which is titled after a speech which is written by the Athenian orator Isocrates of 5th century BC. And it's a very famous work by John Milton. The name of the work is Areopagitica. Areopagitica, which was published in 1644, and this Areopagitica published in 1644 by John Milton, is titled after a speech which was written by the Athenian orator Isocrates in the 5th century BC. And this is the work by John Milton where he is of the opinion that freedom of press is the Almighty's will, right? In which work, can you tell me the name of the work in which Milton identifies himself as the future poet? Can you tell me the name of the work in which Milton identifies himself as the future poet? The name of the work in which Milton identifies himself as the future poet. Can you tell me the name of the work? The name of the work is Poems. Poems. It is basically a collection of poems by Milton which was published in 1645, and it is in this collection poems titled Poems where Milton identifies himself as the future poet. This was published in 1645 and it was again republished in 1673. Now, can you tell me the name of the work by Milton where he accuses Charles of hypocrisy? Can you tell me the name of the work by John Milton where he accuses Charles of hypocrisy? The name of the work is Iconoclasts. Spelling is Iconoclastes. Iconoclast, which was published in 1649, right? Next question is, can you tell me the name of the tragic closet drama by John Milton, which was modeled on Greek tragedy? Can you tell me the tragic closet drama by John Milton, which was based or modeled on Greek tragedy? What is the name of the drama? I'll give you hint number 2. The famous critic and author David Dashius calls this drama by John Milton as, I quote him, the only successful Greek tragedy in English. The only successful Greek tragedy in English. This was the famous critic and author David Dashius had to say about this particular tragic closet drama by John Milton, which was modeled on Greek tragedy. The answer is Samsung Agonistes. Samsung Agonistes. Now again a trivia. We all know about Milton's grand style and the quality of sublimity in Milton's style of writing. So the trivia is John Dryden. John Dryden was the first person to describe or to state the fact that John Milton as a poet of sublime. So he was the first person, John Dryden, to describe John Milton as the poet of sublime, right? So yeah, so I think I've tried to provide some important informations on today's writing. If you do like my video, please do subscribe to the channel. Please ask your colleagues and friends also to refer to my channel, and if they like the content, please do subscribe. These quizzes generally I hold every day from 10 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Please do join me tomorrow again. Till then, please do take care of yourself. Good night. Thank you so much.